the myth that economic growth is driven by savings and capital accumulation. Like all myths, this has an element of truth to it. This myth is particularly pushed by Austrians. The source of this myth is based on the idea that originally economists thought that there were only three inputs to the economy: land, labor, and capital. It was only by increasing one of these three inputs that you could increase the economic growth. It's important to understand what they mean by these terms. Land is fairly obvious. Land can only be increased for the most part by going to war. So that's out as a way to increase economic growth. By labor, economists meant just physical labor. They just treat human beings as some sort of smart beast of burden or a piece of machinery. Increasing the number of people, that is the amount of labor, does not increase per capita income. It might increase the GDP of the country, but it does nothing for the average person. By capital, they meant equipment, machinery, buildings, and infrastructure used in the production process. Since you can't easily increase land or labor, they came to the conclusion that the only way that the real economic growth happened was by increases in capital. Note, there's been a push to redefine capital to include all sorts of things like entrepreneurship, human capital, inventions, but that's not what the term originally meant. Adding all these other things into capital just confuses things. The only way to increase capital, the original definition of capital, was to increase savings. Because if you increase savings, then you could afford to buy more capital, that is, machinery, etc. Therefore, their argument was that savings is what drives economic growth. There is an element of truth to this. Austrians like to point this out because Keynesians say economic growth is created by consumption, which of course is insane. Consumption is the opposite of production. The Austrians point out that economic growth isn't driven by consumption, but they say it's driven by savings. The reverse is true. Reducing or destroying capital will lower economic growth. That is, if you eat into savings, like for instance, if the farmer eats his seed corn, it will definitely hurt his production and his output the next season. If a country isn't able to replace its capital, that is, its machinery and equipment or its infrastructure, as it wears out, then its economic output will decrease. But the reverse is not necessarily true. The reverse is true in the case of a country that's like a second or third world country, that is not on the leading edge technologically or economically. Then it's possible, by increasing capital, which is in fact just buying existing technology that has already been invented, the country can grow economically and increase its per capita income, which is part of what Javier Milei's strategy is for Argentina. This process is called convergence, and Milei talks about this in a number of his speeches. But a country that's a leading economic country and a technological country cannot use this process. To understand why, a simple example is that once a farmer buys a tractor, buying another tractor will not necessarily make him more productive. Once he's reached the limits of the ability of that tractor to speed up production, buying another tractor, capital will not increase his output. Another example we need to understand is that human beings for centuries lived in the Malthusian trap, which means that they were living on the edge of starvation. That means there was absolutely no surplus for them to save. There's no surplus to save if you're in the Malthusian trap. So savings can't be the driver of economic growth that got us out of the Malthusian trap. If there was any sort of surplus food in the Malthusian trap, what did people do? Like all animals, the first thing they did was to add a little fat. The second thing they do is that they increase their population. Savings doesn't give you knowledge to create capital to increase production. If we look at anthropology, humans basically were living without any technology until the hand axe came along. When the hand axe comes along, humans' brain size increases, but also their population increases. So this points to the reason why the only way to create real economic growth is to increase our level of technology, because humans are rational animals. What do they do to increase the energy that they have available to use? They invent things like trains, planes, tractors, CNC machines, robots, oil wells, etc. It is technology, that is inventions, not increases in savings, that create economic growth, particularly real per capita economic growth. I'll just reiterate, if a country's fallen behind like Argentina, then it can just buy advanced technology that's already been created by other countries in order to catch up economically. But this will not work for first world countries. Those countries have to invent in order to increase their per capita GDP. Long live freedom, damn it.